Okay, today we'll be making, as promised, the Char Kway Teow, which is a Malaysian dish with flat rice noodles. Very, very popular, one of my personal favourites. There'll be a few steps involved in this one. So we begin by making our barbecue chicken. Commonly in Asian cuisine they use pork. We tend to prefer using chicken. I think it's a nicer meat. It's a personal choice. You can do exactly the same thing with pork if you prefer. But we'll do it with chicken today. So the first step is to actually marinate the chicken. So if you come in, we'll have a look at what we'll be using here. So we've got some drumsticks that have been filleted out. You can buy commonly, we use Maryland fillets, and the thighs we use in stir fries, and the drumsticks we use for this marination. So first thing we add to the chicken is our hoisin sauce, which is basically an Asian barbecue sauce. We've got some here to use. So we'll add that in now. Now, when you're adding this, it's going to depend on how much you use. So you basically just want to add enough in there so you can coat the chicken comfortably. Of course, like everything, you can add more or less depending. The hoisin's got made with soybeans, and it's quite a beany, strong taste, almost alcoholic in some ways. So some people prefer to have a little bit less sauce. Obviously, it's a personal preference. We put in a pinch of salt. Now, as this chicken marinates, the salt will help to draw out some of the juices, and it'll make the chicken itself more solid, especially or drier, if you will. The last ingredient is what gives the meat its famous red color, and it's purely and simply red dye, red food dye. So you're looking to have, probably in this quantity, probably about 1/4 teaspoon. It's quite potent. You can see it here. You can buy this in just very small plastic packets, and you can use just a little bit at a time. This is purely preferential. It doesn't add to the flavour of the chicken, or it doesn't affect the quality of the chicken. It's purely an aesthetic thing. So obviously you get that nice red ring around the chicken. So all we need to do, very simply, is stir it up. Make sure every part of the chicken's covered. This is what I would say is on the generous side of using the hoisin. That's quite a fair bit there. So you could certainly use a little bit less. We're obviously used to making much bigger quantities, doing kilos at a time. So we give it a good stir, make sure it's all covered. And then what we would do with that, generally, you want this to marinate ideally overnight before you cook it. What will happen then is the colour will actually infuse into the meat, and the salt will pull all the moisture out of it. So when you cook it, it'll be nice and crisp and dry through the middle, which is exactly what we want from the barbecue chicken. So let's imagine that we've let that sit overnight. You'll actually notice that it becomes a little bit more red, and there'll be a little bit more liquid on the outside of the chicken. That's quite normal. So the next step, traditionally the way they cook these chickens in Asian restaurants that have the equipment would be in a char siu oven. So that would be like a big barbecue, and these meats would hang on hooks, and they would be hung around the top. Big gas fire in the bottom, and as you see in a lot of the Asian restaurants, in their windows, they have all that meat hanging on hooks. Well, that's what they cook it. They cook it in a barbecue, and then they just hang it up afterwards. So what you can do, obviously not everyone has a char siu oven, and we don't either. So what you can do is basically use just a normal tray and use a cake rack that you don't use for cakes, and all you need to do is, and often it's good to put a layer of baking paper underneath, because the marinade that drips onto the tray will actually burn. So we generally put down a baking paper before we bake it, but I'm just showing you for demonstration purpose. And then you lay it out. What this allows, the rack brings it off the bottom of the tray, and it just allows the heat to get underneath. Because what you want with the barbecue chicken, critically, is you want to get really nice brown caramelized edges, and it'll be nice and soft in the middle. That's what you want from a good quality barbecue chicken. So that's what we might do, and then we'd put it in the oven, cook it at about 250 degrees, and you cook this for around 15 to 20 minutes. Now what I like to do at the end, once you can tell that it's actually cooked, if you just touch it and it's nice and firm, you can actually turn the oven up to full and just give it another 5 to 10 minutes, and that will actually caramelise it and give it a nice brown colouring. Now, we don't have any whole ones to show you, but once you've cooked them off, you bring them out. You can actually serve that chicken as it is. So some people might use it as a main course, and you can just have vegetables and barbecue chicken with it. It's a beautiful dish. We do it in one of our other dishes, the barbecue tenderloins. Obviously for stir frying purposes, the best thing to do is actually cool that chicken down. Once it cools down, it's much easier to slice nice and thinly, and this is the result that you'll get. So you'll see that the chicken's nice and cooked through the middle, and we've got that little red ring, and it's got some marinade around it, so it just has a slightly sweeter taste. Okay, so that's how we create our barbecue chicken for the first step. The second step is actually creating our soy sauce. Now, in our first demonstration where we did the Thai style, we talked about the Thai soy being one of the only soys you can actually use straight from the bottle and into the wok. This one here. So the Thai soy, fantastic soy because you don't have to do anything to it. Put it straight in the wok and use it, it's ready to go. With all your other soys, your Chinese or Japanese soys, you actually need to then turn them into a sauce. You need to make a sauce out of them because they're too salty on their own and they lack that little bit of flavour. So what we've got here, we've got a couple of different soy sauces. We've got, this one is a dark mushroom soy, which you'll see is very thick and very rich. As you can see, it almost looks like grease. It is that thick. This one's quite strong and quite salty, so usually we use a smaller amount of it. So if we said that we used 1 part of the mushroom soy, what that's going to do is give the sauce a much more richer, darker flavour. Second soy we use is a light soy. So the light soys tend to be a little less saltier. So we use 2 parts of that, and as you can see, as we run it in, it's not quite as thick and rich as the mushroom. And then here's the surprise, but we'll actually put in there 4 parts of water. So as you can see, as you can imagine, if you're just using your soy straight off the shelf and using it into a stir fry, it can actually be quite salty. So we like to tone it down. Now into this, as a preference, you can add a little bit of sugar. We don't do that. A lot of the Asian kitchens will do that. And you can put a little bit of salt in there as well. Also, you could add a little bit of chili, which we prefer not to, just in case people tell us that they don't want chili in there. We can always add it as we make it. But if you prefer, you can actually put just a nice teaspoon of dried chili. Will actually just give it a nice hint of spice, very subtle. All we do with this, very simple, basically just bring it to the boil and let it simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. And that's all we really need to do. Once that's made up, that will last you months. So it's good to make a big batch of it, stick it in the fridge, and then you've got it there ready to go. What I like to do at home is actually have maybe 3, 4 or 5 sauces in big amounts, so that when you go home you can quickly just make a stir fry and your sauces are already there to go, and you've got variety, so you're not getting sick of the same thing.